Hey friendos, this is Sandeep here from ShareTreck, and today I'm going to talk to you about my fave five stocks for 2024. So let's get started. Welcome back, friendos. So our wonderful friend Raj did a very similar video a short while ago. So if you haven't checked that out yet, go ahead and see it. It's a wonderful list. He goes into technology, into genomics, into biopharma, biotech. Wonderful video, and it inspired me to do my own. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the fundamental side, and I'm going to mention a few companies that you don't hear about too often, but they are large cap companies, companies that I believe have a lot of growth potential in 2024. And I'd like to also get your opinions about it later on. So, me being the growth investor and me being the growth investor and this being a genomics channel, the first company I'd like to talk about is actually CRISPR Therapeutics, CRSP. The reason why I love CRISPR, CRSP is Roger already talked about the pipeline where it's got a clinical trials for his diabetes medicine. It's got two CAR T cancer therapy drugs that are fully made by CRISPR in development. And when those get going, I feel that the company is going to increase its revenue a lot. But talking more so from the fundamental perspective, this is, in my opinion, the genomics company with the best cash position. Greater than $1 million in cash. It became revenue positive here in 2023 and in 2024 with the support it's getting from its partner in Vertex. I really think it's positioned for a lot of growth. So balance sheet risk low, considering some of the other genomics companies in the field, that is a definite positive. It's getting revenue going and it's got an amazing pipeline. So CRISPR, number one pick for my fave five. Now, next is going to be a very, very intriguing company. Um, a lot of folks know that I like to tout a lot about the wonderful growth and the great potential in NVIDIA, and the company I have always been bullish on for a long period of time, AMD. Raj mentioned these in his technology video, but I am actually going to mention Intel, INTC. What I love about this company, Intel, is in 2023, it went through a miraculous metamorphosis of changing for what I believe was a long-term, almost Warren Buffett style baby boomer company where it paid out its revenue through dividends, and it was a solid company which it just gave dividends. It gave its profit back to its shareholders through dividends, and there wasn't a lot of growth. However, early on in late 2022, early 2023, Intel did something which honestly blew my mind. And credit to anyone who read the earnings and caught it because Intel is up 90% in 2023 alone. What Intel did was it transitioned from a blue chip paying out dividends, sort of traditional, almost like Dow Jones sort of company where it is a very safe bet to transition into a growth company. Intel, it discovered that there was a big potential in the advanced microchip and nano chip industry, which is an industry where TSM controlled about 92% of the advanced chip market. What Intel did was it partnered up with this Dutch company, ASML, and it started producing some of these chips. It got rid of the low margin stuff, such as memory, and it started producing the high margin things. It just invested a bunch of its income, a bunch of its revenue into growth. And later on in 2023, that growth started to get recognized, where it started getting military contracts. It took advantage of the CHIPS Act. It took advantage of all of these government money coming in. It did lower his dividend. It almost got rid of his dividend entirely, but Intel, it now, from projecting a negative growth rate, is now saying it has a growth rate of 50%, and that is Wall Street EPS, uh, earnings per share growth estimate, 50%. And that is just amazing how it can just transition from traditional company to this growth company. But I'd love to talk more about that later on. Right now, Intel, with its current price of about $50.25 and its 50% revenue growth, EPS growth estimate, is trading at a 0.9 PEG ratio, which is less than one. I could talk forever about this company, but I'm just going to keep it brief. Intel is my number two fave five for 2024, which I still believe there's growth at, despite being at a new all-time high as of about a week ago. My third company is, and this is another beaten down company, PayPal, PYPL. What do I like about PayPal? It is in the industry of financials, but it's a fintech company. And 2022, 2023, even a little bit of the later part of 2021, these fintechs were heavily beaten because people wanted to the traditional finance things because they are seen as much more safe and they trade at a much lower valuation. And PayPal started missing a whole bunch of these earnings, and it still continues to do so. But I am optimistic about PayPal because looking at its earnings, I discovered something which thankfully we can discover from earnings, which is it de-risked a lot of its high risk things where it took its buy now, pay later, which can be very risky, in my opinion, especially either coming out of a recession or going into a recession. We'll see how that goes. It took its buy now, pay rate later and sold it off to other revenue companies, which it got the revenue right away from selling that off, and it took away the risk because it just transferred it to someone else. Another thing I like about PayPal is it holds Bitcoin and crypto, and it allows the trading of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and the storage of Bitcoin cryptocurrency, which right now, as we enter a halving cycle, we could talk more about that later, but that is nice to hear. It's not their primary revenue source, but it is another thing to consider. What really attracts me about PayPal is it is just so beaten down. It's down, I believe it was 17% on the year. And despite that, it's trading at about a 1.97 PEG ratio because Wall Street revenue estimate of 12.88 going into its $60 price tag and its end of year EPS estimate of 5 gives it a PE ratio of 12.33, which is lower than almost all of the banks. The company attracts me because it's trading so cheaply. And I think it could be a real sleeper pick, especially as this de-risking. And if we did avoid a recession, which I don't know if we did or not, PayPal is going, in my opinion, be well positioned to um, help out and attract some of the newer, younger folk using these systems. And that really, really makes me bullish for 2024, potentially. My next pick, my number four pick is, and this is going to really sound surprising to a lot of people, especially because I am a younger, I like to believe, younger, growth-oriented investor. This company is John Deere, DE, ticker symbol DE, Dow Jones Company, S&P 500 company. And why do I like John Deere? I'll tell you, ShareTreck friendos, why I like John Deere. I was looking at its earnings, and this company trades surprisingly cheaply. It's got a PE ratio, forward PE ratio of about 14, and Wall Street is expecting an EPS growth rate of about 8.2%. Considering its current price about $400, that does make its PEG ratio 1.75, which is a little higher than the one we've seen for Intel and for PayPal. However, what I did find really, really nice is this company, I believe, is well positioned for either going into a recession and coming out of a recession because it has lots of cash and it has its own financing app for a lot of this heavy farm equipment, which is it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions of dollars. Financing is really, really difficult for some of those. He came up with his own app. It's got his own customer base. It's got a very dedicated customer base for DE John Deere. And as we enter 2024, there's going to be a world-changing event in the election, which I know that's going to cause a lot of people a lot of anxiety. But what comes out after an election is often a lot of infrastructure spending. And John Deere is one of those positions which kind of like Caterpillar, where it's heavy duty equipment, it's industrial equipment, it really gets used a lot in infrastructure, in building, in construction, and in addition to farming, which my my family comes from a farming background in India, and that's also a little bit near and dear to my heart. So John Deere, I think an underrated pick, trading not too um cheaply, but it's trading very nicely and it's a very safe pick. And for you dividend friendos out there, it pays a very small dividend. Now, my number one pick, my fave five. Before I get to it, I like to talk about a few little honorable mentions, some things that I'm considering looking at, and those are Etsy, AMD and NVIDIA, of course, FTNT, which is a cybersecurity company, and AXP, American Express. Of course, I also like Thermo Fisher Scientifica, Microsoft, Tesla, but I wanted to go ahead and pick some of the more out there, more wild uh, companies that you don't hear of too frequently. So these are some companies that I'm thinking of. But my number one Fave 5 pick, which I feel quite confident is well positioned for 2024, is Enphase Energy, ENPH. I talk a lot about this company to the folks I speak to in person about stocks and finance. I really like this company. This is a company that took advantage. It's smart where it takes advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act. It's in the solar industry, which I personally believe the solar industry has a lot of potential for growth. And this company is down over 50% on the year of 2023. It's up about 30% since we got the summary of economic projections where the Federal Reserve said we're expecting a few interest rate decreases in 2024. The Federal rate, the Federal Reserve says we're expecting about 3. Markets right now pricing in about 5, so we'll see how that goes. Enphase solar is an industry that does very well during two times, which is low interest rate environments, because these are very capital intensive, much like John Deere with their tractors. So what I know is very expensive things like autos, like it's construction equipment, and like solar. When rates are lower, people finance these things more and buy these things more. But another thing I love about Enphase Energy is its margins continue to go up despite its growth being revised down. Its margin continues to go up, and it is, in my opinion, and based off what I read, much better positioned than the other solar companies in the field. I looked at Solar Edge, I've looked at Canadian Solar. I haven't looked at many of the Chinese companies, but I've looked at its biggest competitors. Enphase does not really hold inventory. It kind of makes its solar almost ready to order, and it outsources it to contractors and takes a cut. Unlike some of the other solar companies, which I've seen have 5% margins, 4% margins, 6, 7% margins, Enphase is giving net margins of 20 plus, 22, close to 25, which really makes me happy and bullish as a fundamental investor. It it trades so much more cheaply than it did in the past. And the second part where um Enphase does well is fear. In its recent earnings, Enphase said that it got a big influx of orders during the unfortunate Russia-Ukraine war crisis, where a lot of people were worried about we're not going to get any oil, and they went off and they impulse bought solar. So that really inflated its stock price. It's come down since then because of um, revised down revenue estimates, but I really think Enphase is going to be a company that is well positioned. It has at a it has a lot of capital. Balance sheet risk is very low, and it's during a lower interest rate time and during a time where there's might be more infrastructure spending or more fear spending. Enphase, ticker symbol ENPH, which, much like John Deere, Intel, and PayPal are all part of the S&P 500. I think that it is well positioned. I think these five, my fave five companies you don't hear too frequently, are going to be very nice for 2024, potentially. Not financial advice. I encourage you all to please do your own due diligence and look these all up. Don't just go by some random fellow over here from Canada who's talking about some potential companies. Do your own due diligence, but what I really like to hear is feedback. Give me your fave 5, your fave 10. What do you like in 2024? What themes, what industries do you think is going to be very nice in the new year? Speaking of New Year's, I really want to thank you all for watching this. I want to wish you all, our ShareTreck viewers, I want to wish Raj as well and his family, all of you and your families, your friendos, and just your neighbors, everyone on the street, your pets, whomever. A very happy New Year, happy holidays. Thank you all very kindly for giving me this opportunity. And I am very, very happy and thank you all, and I look forward to a wonderful 2024. Hope you'll see much more of me. Hope you'll watch much more of me. And until then, see you later, friendos. Happy New Year and stay based.